The cold fluorescent lights of the veterinary clinic cast harsh shadows across Emily's tear-stained face as she cradled Max, her once powerful German shepherd, now just skin and bones, in her trembling arms. His breathing came in shallow gasps, each one seeming like it might be his last. "It's time, Max," she whispered, pressing her forehead against his graying muzzle. "You've fought so hard." Outside the window, thunder rolled, just like that terrible day 5 years ago when floodwaters had claimed everything she loved, everything except this loyal dog who had pulled her from the current when all hope seemed lost. Dr. Thompson entered, syringe in hand, his face a mask of professional compassion. But as he approached, something caught his eye. He frowned, leaning closer to examine Max's face. "Wait," he said, setting the syringe down. "Something's not right." Emily looked up, confusion mingling with grief, as the veterinarian's words hung in the sterile air between them. "We can't put him down. Not today." Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Emily Winters had been a pediatric nurse at Mercy General for nearly a decade, but no amount of professional experience with suffering had prepared her for watching her own beloved companion waste away. At 36, she lived alone in a modest cottage on the outskirts of Riverdale, the same small town where she'd grown up, though the landscape had been forever altered by the catastrophic flood 5 years earlier. That flood had taken everything from her: parents, younger brother, their family home, and all the memories contained within its walls. The authorities had warned residents to evacuate, but Emily's father, stubborn to the end, had insisted they could weather the storm. By the time the levee broke, it was too late. Emily alone had survived, pulled from the raging waters by a powerful German shepherd from the county's Canine Rescue Unit. Max had found her clinging to a floating piece of debris, half-conscious and hypothermic. The dog had dragged her to higher ground where rescue workers could reach her. In the aftermath, when Emily learned that Max's handler had perished in a separate rescue attempt, she couldn't bear the thought of the hero dog being sent to another handler, or worse, retired to a kennel. She'd adopted him, and they'd healed together, two survivors bound by shared trauma and quiet resilience. Until 3 months ago, Max had been the picture of health, despite his advancing years. At 10, he still carried himself with the dignity of his training, his dark eyes alert and intelligent. Then came the arthritis diagnosis, normal for his age and breed. Dr. Thompson had said, prescribing Gerapaw's Animal Health Inc.'s newest medication for aging canines. The drug had been heavily advertised, with commercials showing elderly dogs romping like puppies again. What Emily couldn't know was that the medication that promised to ease Max's golden years was slowly poisoning him. She had used her savings to help Marcus Williams, an 8-year-old patient whose family couldn't afford a critical surgery. When Max began deteriorating rapidly, Emily faced the horrible truth. She could neither afford extensive treatment nor bear to watch him suffer. Athasa Thompson, James to his friends, understood her predicament all too well. A former Army veterinarian who had served with military dogs in Afghanistan, he recognized the bond between handler and dog. When Emily had called about euthanasia, his heart had broken for them both. The morning Emily had decided to end Max's suffering began like any other, except for the weight of finality that hung in the air. She had risen before dawn, unable to sleep, and spent those quiet hours sitting beside Max's bed, running her fingers through his once lustrous coat. The medication that was supposed to help him, Gerapaw's, the miracle drug for aging dogs, seemed to have accelerated his decline instead. His once powerful frame had become gaunt, his eyes cloudy and unfocused. Worst of all were the tremors that racked his body, leaving him whimpering in pain. "I can't let you suffer any more, old friend," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. She'd made the appointment with Dr. Thompson for 9 o'clock, giving herself these final hours to say goodbye. At 7, she cooked Max's favorite meal, a simple hamburger patty, something she'd rarely allowed him as a treat. He barely touched it, managing only a few listless licks before turning away. That, more than anything, confirmed for Emily that she was making the right decision, however much it tore at her heart. By 8, she had packed a small bag with Max's favorite blanket, the worn tennis ball he'd carried around for years, and an envelope containing a letter she'd written the night before. The letter detailed every way Max had saved her, not just from the flood, but from the despair that followed. She planned to read it to him in his final moments, a testament to a life well lived and deeply appreciated. "Ready for a ride, Max?" she asked, forcing brightness into her voice. At the word ride, Max's ears had once perked up eagerly. Now he merely raised his head slightly, his eyes finding hers with what seemed like resigned understanding. It took all her strength to help him into the car, his once powerful legs barely able to support his weight. The drive to Riverdale Veterinary Clinic was mercifully short. Emily parked in the rear lot, close to the entrance Dr. Thompson had suggested they use, a private door that would spare them walking through the main waiting room with its curious eyes and healthy pets. The doctor was waiting for them, his kind face solemn as he helped Emily guide Max into the specially prepared room. "Take all the time you need," he said softly, leaving them alone with the promise to return when Emily signaled she was ready. The euthanasia room was nothing like the sterile clinical space Emily had feared. Dr. Thompson had transformed it with soft lighting, comfortable blankets spread on the floor, and even a small vase of fresh flowers on the windowsill. Emily settled onto the blankets, guiding Max to lie beside her, his heavy head resting in her lap. With trembling hands, she unfolded her letter and began to read. "My dearest Max," she started, her voice catching, "how do I begin to thank the dog who saved not just my life but my soul? When the flood waters took everything I loved, you pulled me from the darkness, literally and figuratively." She read on, recounting their years together, the quiet companionship, the nightmares from which he'd woken her with gentle nudges, the slow rebuilding of a life forever altered by loss. By the time she finished, her tears had soaked into Max's fur, but there was also a sense of peace. She had said everything she needed to say. Emily pressed the small button Dr. Thompson had left, signaling she was ready. When he entered, syringe in hand, she felt a strange calm. This final act of love, sparing Max further suffering, was the least she could do for the dog who had given her so much. "Do it." Dr. Thompson knelt beside them, his movements gentle and unhurried. He carefully examined Max one last time, checking his gums, his eyes, the rhythm of his labored breathing. It was then that his professional demeanor changed, a slight frown crossing his features. "Emily," he said slowly, "has Max been displaying any symptoms besides the pain and weakness? Any changes in his eyes or skin tone?" Confused, Emily nodded. "His eyes have been yellowing a bit, and he's had some redness around his muzzle. I assumed it was just part of the end." Dr. Thompson set the syringe down and pulled a small penlight from his pocket, examining Max's eyes more closely. "And you said these symptoms started after he began taking Gerapause?" "Yes, within a few weeks. Why? Does it matter now?" The veterinarian's expression had grown intensely focused. "It might matter very much," he said. "I've seen something similar in another patient recently, also on Gerapause." He placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. "I don't want to give you false hope, but I think we should postpone today's procedure. Would you be willing to try something? Stop the medication completely and bring Max back in a week?" Emily stared at him, afraid to let even a glimmer of hope into her heart. "You think the medicine is making him sick? But it's supposed to help him." "That's what it's supposed to do," Dr. Thompson replied grimly. "I'm not sure that's what it's doing. Will you trust me on this?" For the first time in weeks, Emily felt something other than despair. "Of course. Anything that gives him a chance. The drive home from the veterinary clinic felt surreal to Emily. Max lay quietly in the back seat, his breathing still labored but somehow less desperate than before. Hope was a dangerous thing, Emily knew, especially hope that arrived at the 11th hour when you'd already made your peace with loss. Still, she found herself glancing repeatedly in the rearview mirror, studying Max's face for any sign of immediate change. "We're going to try something different, old boy," she murmured as she helped him from the car. Getting him up the 3 steps to her front porch was an ordeal that left them both exhausted. Once inside, Max settled heavily onto his bed in the living room corner, while Emily gathered up the bottles of Jerry Paws that had been stationed throughout the house. Kitchen counter, bedroom shelf, bedside table, constant reminders of the regimen she'd followed so faithfully. She lined the bottles up on the kitchen table, frowning at the cheerful packaging with its images of rejuvenated senior dogs playing like puppies. The television commercials for Jerry Paws had been equally upbeat, featuring testimonials from owners whose aging pets had apparently experienced miraculous recoveries. $150 per month, a substantial sum on a nurse's salary, but Emily hadn't hesitated. Max deserved whatever might ease his path into old age. Now, following Dr. Thompson's instructions, she dumped the remaining pills into a Ziploc bag and buried it deep in the trash. No more medications, no more forcing pills down Max's reluctant throat. Just wait and watch. The first 3 days brought little change. Max remained lethargic, barely eating, spending most of his time sleeping. Emily took time off work, calling in favors from colleagues to cover her shifts. She slept on the couch beside Max's bed, waking at the slightest sound to check on him. By the 3rd night, doubt had begun to creep in. Had she just prolonged his suffering? Was Dr. Thompson grasping at straws, unwilling to perform a necessary but painful service? Then came the 4th morning. Emily woke to an unfamiliar sensation, something cold and wet pressing against her hand that dangled off the couch. Opening her eyes, she found Max standing beside her, his nose nudging her fingers. "Max?" she whispered, afraid to believe what she was seeing. The German shepherd gave a soft whine, not of pain, but the familiar sound he'd always made when hungry. His tail, which had hung lifelessly for weeks, gave the slightest wag. Scrambling to sit up, Emily cupped his face in her hands, examining him closely. The yellowing in his eyes seemed less pronounced, and though he was still painfully thin, there was an alertness in his gaze that had been absent for too long. "You want breakfast, boy?" Her voice quavered with emotion as Max responded with another gentle whine. In the kitchen, Max managed to eat half a bowl of softened kibble, more than he'd consumed in a single sitting for weeks. Afterward, instead of retreating immediately to his bed, he followed Emily to the back door and stood expectantly. When she opened it, he stepped gingerly into the small fenced yard, lifting his nose to the morning breeze. Emily stood watching from the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth to stifle a sob. This was far from the robust, powerful dog who had pulled her from floodwaters, but it was also markedly different from the suffering animal she'd nearly euthanized just days before. By the 5th day, Max was able to make it around the block on a slow walk, stopping frequently but moving with growing confidence. On the 6th day, when the mail carrier approached the house, Max actually barked. A hoarse shadow of his once authoritative warning, but a bark nonetheless. When she called Dr. Thompson to report these changes, his response was measured but encouraging. "Bring him in tomorrow as planned," he said. "I want to run some tests, see if what I'm suspecting holds water." "And what are you suspecting?" Emily asked. There was a pause. "I'd rather not say until I'm more certain. Just keep doing what you're doing. No medication, good food, gentle exercise." The following morning, Emily and Max returned to the clinic, this time through the front entrance. Several people in the waiting room looked up in surprise. Many were locals who knew Max's story, who had seen his decline, who had perhaps even heard about his scheduled euthanasia. "Isn't that the winter's rescue dog?" she overheard one elderly woman whisper. "I thought he was on his last legs." Dr. Thompson welcomed them into an examination room, his face breaking into a genuine smile as Max walked in under his own power. He conducted a thorough examination, drawing blood samples and checking Max's vitals with methodical care. "His color is better," he noted, examining Max's gums, "and the yellowing in his eyes has definitely decreased. How's his appetite?" "Improving daily," Emily reported. "He's eating almost normally now, and he's more alert, more present." She hesitated. "James, what's going on? A week ago he was dying." The veterinarian leaned against the examination table, his expression turning serious. "I believe Max was having an adverse reaction to Gerapause. A severe one." "But how is that possible? It's made by Animal Health Inc., and they're the biggest pet pharmaceutical company in the country. Wouldn't they test for reactions like this?" "You would think so," Dr. Thompson replied, his tone carefully neutral. "The thing is, I've started noticing a pattern. In the last 6 months, I've had 3 other senior dogs present with similar symptoms, all on Gerapause. 2 were too far gone to save, but the 3rd improved after we discontinued the medication, just like Max." Emily's nursing background kicked in. Could it be a bad batch? Some kind of contamination in the manufacturing process? "Maybe." He didn't sound convinced. "But there's something else. I've been doing some research, reaching out to colleagues in other practices. It's not just here in Riverdale. Vets across the state are reporting similar cases." "That can't be coincidence," Emily said slowly. "No, I don't believe it is." Dr. Thompson's voice hardened. "Emily, I think we need to look into this further. If Gerapause is harming animals instead of helping them, people need to know." Emily looked down at Max, who sat patiently at her feet, still thin, still aged, but alive and improving. How many other beloved pets had been lost because their owners, like her, trusted a company's claims without question? "What do we do next?" she asked. The next several weeks unfolded with a sense of purpose that Emily hadn't felt since her days volunteering with the flood recovery efforts. Each morning began with documenting Max's condition in the journal Dr. Thompson had provided. Weight, appetite, energy levels, and any new developments, positive or negative. The German Shepherd's improvement continued steadily, though not without setbacks. Some days he would seem almost his old self, trotting alongside Emily on their morning walks with a shadow of his former dignity. Other days, the lingering effects of whatever had poisoned his system would resurface, leaving him trembling and weak. Dr. Thompson had begun compiling a case file, meticulously gathering evidence from his own practice and beyond. Every few days he would call Emily with updates, his voice growing increasingly grim as the pattern became clearer. "I've identified 27 cases across 3 states now," he told her during one such call. "All senior dogs, all prescribed Gerapause within the past year, all presenting with similar symptoms: liver dysfunction, neurological issues, severe lethargy. 9 of them died or were euthanized before anyone made the connection." "That's criminal," Emily said, watching Max doze in a patch of sunlight on her living room floor. "How can Animal Health Inc. not know about this?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Dr. Thompson replied. "I think it's time we found out." The meeting with Animal Health Inc. was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at their regional headquarters in Cincinnati, a gleaming glass building that dominated the downtown skyline. Emily had taken a personal day from the hospital, leaving Max in the care of her neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy, who had been following his recovery with grandmotherly concern. Dr. Thompson picked Emily up in his aging Subaru, his normally casual demeanor replaced by uncharacteristic formality. He wore a suit that had seen better days, his tie knotted with the careful precision of someone who rarely wore one. "You didn't have to dress up on my account," Emily said, attempting to lighten the mood. "Not for you," he replied grimly. "Corporate types take you more seriously when you look the part, and we need them to take us very seriously indeed." The 3-hour drive passed with Dr. Thompson briefing Emily on what to expect. The regional director, Walter Cunningham, had agreed to meet them, along with the company's senior veterinary consultant and a representative from their legal department. This last detail had raised red flags for both of them. "They're already in defensive mode," Dr. Thompson noted, "but that's actually good. It means they know there's something to defend against." Emily stared out the window at the passing farmland. "What if they just shut us down, tell us we're mistaken, and show us the door? Then we go to Plan B, which is taking our evidence public." He glanced at her. "But that comes with risks. Animal Health, Inc. has deep pockets and an army of lawyers. They could make life very difficult for both of us." Emily thought of Max, of the other pets who had suffered, of the owners who had lost their companions without ever knowing why. Some things are worth the risk. At the Animal Health Inc. headquarters, they were ushered through security with efficiency that bordered on coldness. The receptionist, a young woman with an immaculate appearance and practiced smile, escorted them to a conference room on the 23rd floor with sweeping views of the Ohio River. "Mr. Cunningham will be with you shortly," she informed them, offering coffee or water that both declined. Left alone, Emily felt suddenly out of her depth. Her navy pantsuit, the one she reserved for job interviews and parent conferences at the hospital, seemed shabby compared to the opulence surrounding them. Even Dr. Thompson appeared uncomfortable, adjusting and readjusting the files he had placed on the polished table. "Remember," he said quietly, "no matter how they try to intimidate us, we have facts on our side." The door opened, admitting 3 people. A silver-haired man in his 60s with the confident bearing of long-time authority, a middle-aged woman whose white coat and stethoscope seemed calculated to establish medical credibility, and a younger man with sharp eyes who carried a leather portfolio and said nothing as he took his seat. "Dr. Thompson, Miss Winters," the older man began, extending his hand. "Walter Cunningham, Regional Director. Thank you for bringing your concerns to our attention. This is Dr. Patricia Lawson, our Senior Veterinary Consultant, and Mr. Eric Daniels from our Legal Department." The introductions complete, Cunningham settled into the chair at the head of the table, his expression a careful blend of concern and professional detachment. "Now, I understand you have some questions about our Jerry Paws product line?" Dr. Thompson didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We have more than questions, Mr. Cunningham. We have evidence that Jerry Paws is causing serious illness in the animals it's supposed to be helping." He opened his file, sliding across several sheets of neatly organized data. "I've documented 27 cases so far, all with the same pattern of symptoms, all improving when the medication is discontinued." Dr. Lawson picked up the papers, scanning them with a frown. "This is quite an accusation, Dr. Thompson. Jerry Paws underwent extensive clinical trials before release. It's been on the market for 18 months with an excellent safety profile. With respect, Dr. Lawson, the evidence suggests otherwise." Dr. Thompson pulled out more documentation, blood test results, before and after photos, testimonials from pet owners. "These aren't isolated incidents. They represent a pattern of adverse reactions that can't be dismissed as coincidence." The legal representative, Daniels, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. "Have you considered that these animals were already ill? Jerry Paws is prescribed for aging pets, many of whom have underlying conditions. Correlation doesn't equal causation." Emily, who had been observing quietly, found herself speaking up. "My dog Max was healthy apart from mild arthritis when he started Jerry Paws. Within 3 months, he was nearly dead. 1 week after stopping the medication, he showed marked improvement. That's not correlation, that's a direct cause and effect. Oh, case hardly constitutes scientific evidence. Dr. Lawson replied, her tone condescending. It's not just one case, Emily countered, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. Did you even look at the files Dr. Thompson provided? 27 cases, all with the same pattern. Cunningham raised a placating hand. We understand your concern, Ms. Winters, and we take any potential issue with our products very seriously. But, as Dr. Lawson pointed out, Gerapaz has helped thousands of pets nationwide. The situations you're describing, while unfortunate, represent a tiny fraction of our user base. A fraction that's growing, Dr. Thompson said. And how many pet owners never made the connection? How many animals suffered or died because everyone assumed their decline was just the natural progression of age? The meeting continued for another hour, a frustrating dance of accusations and deflections. For every piece of evidence Dr. Thompson presented, the Animal Health Inc. representatives had a ready explanation or dismissal. By the time Cunningham brought the meeting to a close, it was clear they had accomplished little. We appreciate you bringing these concerns to our attention, he said, rising to signal the end of the discussion. We'll certainly review your findings and conduct our own internal investigation. In the meantime, I assure you that Gerapaz remains a safe and effective product for the vast majority of pets. In the elevator descending to the lobby, Dr. Thompson's controlled facade finally cracked. They knew, he said quietly. They've seen these reactions before and they've buried them. How can you be sure? Emily asked, though she had sensed the same thing. Did you notice how prepared they were, how they had an answer for everything? They weren't surprised by our evidence, they were ready for it. Back in the car, Dr. Thompson outlined their next steps, continuing to gather evidence, reaching out to more veterinarians, possibly contacting regulatory agencies. Emily listened, her mind racing ahead to the implications. Taking on a corporation like Animal Health Inc. wouldn't be easy. There would be pushback, possibly severe. Her fears proved well-bounded sooner than expected. 3 days after their meeting in Cincinnati, Emily returned home from her shift at the hospital to find her front door slightly ajar. Heart pounding, she called for Max, relief washing over her when he came limping to greet her, apparently unharmed. The same could not be said for her home. Someone had been through her belongings with methodical thoroughness. Drawers stood open, papers scattered, and most tellingly, Dr. Thompson's case file, which she had been keeping updated with Max's progress, was missing from her desk. The police officer who responded to her call was sympathetic but not particularly helpful. Probably just a random break-in, he suggested, filling out his report. Any valuables missing? Just some paperwork, Emily replied, not mentioning the nature of the documents. Something told her to keep that information to herself. That night, after securing new locks on her doors and windows, Emily called Dr. Thompson to report what had happened. I'm not surprised, he said grimly. But don't worry, I kept digital backups of everything. They didn't get anything we can't replace. There was a pause. Emily, this confirms what we suspected. Animal Health Inc. sees us as a threat. Things might get worse before they get better. Are you saying we should stop? No, I'm saying we need to be very careful and perhaps consider getting some legal advice of our own. The following week brought more troubling developments. Dr. Thompson called Emily late one evening, his voice tight with controlled anger. I've been suspended from the Veterinary Association, pending an investigation. What investigation? Emily demanded. Apparently someone has filed a complaint questioning my professional ethics, suggesting I've been providing substandard care and making unsubstantiated claims about established medications. Animal Health Inc.? Almost certainly, though there's no direct evidence. The timing is too convenient to be coincidence. 2 days later, Emily received a letter from the hospital administration requesting a meeting with the ethics committee. The letter cited concerns about unauthorized disclosure of confidential information and inappropriate use of professional credentials in personal advocacy efforts. The implication was clear: back off or risk your career. That same afternoon, Dr. Thompson called again, sounding more shaken than Emily had ever heard him. "Someone jumped me in the clinic parking lot last night," he said without preamble. "2 men, I didn't get a good look at them. They didn't take anything, just delivered a message. Drop the Jerry Paws investigation if you know what's good for you." "My God, James, did you call the police?" "Yes, but without descriptions or evidence, there's little they can do." His voice hardened. "This is how they operate, Emily. Intimidation, threats, professional sabotage. They're trying to isolate us, make us feel alone in this fight." Emily looked across her living room at Max, who had continued to improve despite the chaos erupting around them. He was watching her with those intelligent eyes, as if understanding everything being said. "We're not alone," she said firmly, "and we're not backing down." The turning point came unexpectedly. Emily had been sharing Max's story with some of her regular patients' parents at the hospital, explaining her occasional distraction. One mother, Susan Williams, whose son Marcus was the very child Emily had helped with surgery funds, listened with particular interest. "My husband is a journalist with the Tribune," she said. "He specializes in corporate accountability stories. Would you be willing to talk to him?" Within days, Emily and Dr. Thompson found themselves sitting in the Williams' comfortable suburban home, laying out their evidence for Robert Williams, a sharp-eyed man whose reputation for investigative reporting had earned him both awards and enemies. "This is exactly the kind of story that needs telling," Williams said after reviewing their documentation. "But fair warning, once it goes public, Animal Health Inc. will come at you with everything they've got." "They're already doing that," Dr. Thompson pointed out. "At least this way the truth gets out." Williams nodded. "Give me a week to verify some of your claims independently. Talk to some of these other pet owners. Then we'll publish." As Williams worked on his story, Emily and Dr. Thompson continued gathering evidence. Other veterinarians, hearing about their investigation through professional networks, began reaching out. Some with similar cases, others offering support. One, a pathologist from a teaching hospital in Columbus, offered to perform detailed analysis of Jerry Paws samples to identify potential toxins. Not everyone was supportive. Several of Dr. Thompson's colleagues publicly distanced themselves from his unsubstantiated claims, and Emily received chilly receptions from certain hospital administrators. But for every door that closed, others seemed to open. A growing community of concerned pet owners formed an online support group, sharing stories and resources. By the time Williams called to say his story was ready, Emily and Dr. Thompson had compiled a damning body of evidence. The article, titled "Prescribed Poison? Questions Surround Popular Pet Medication," ran on the front page of the Sunday Tribune, featuring Max's story prominently alongside detailed accounts from other affected pets and owners. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By Monday morning, Animal Health Inc. stock had dropped 12 points. By Tuesday, the company had issued a statement temporarily suspending Jerry Paws sales pending internal review. Local television stations picked up the story, featuring interviews with pet owners whose animals had suffered. Social media exploded with outrage, particularly when photos of before and after cases went viral. Emily's phone rang constantly. Reporters seeking comments, pet owners sharing similar experiences, even anonymous calls alternating between gratitude and threats. Dr. Thompson faced similar pressure, but the tide of public opinion had shifted decisively in their favor. The Veterinary Association that had suspended him announced a formal hearing, but influential members were already speaking out in his defense. It was during this whirlwind that Emily received the call that would change everything, a call from Walter Cunningham himself. "Ms. Winters," he said, his voice lacking its previous confidence, Animal Health, Inc. would like to propose a meeting. Just you and Dr. Thompson with myself and our CEO. No lawyers, no press. There's something we think you should know. Emily and Dr. Thompson approached the second meeting with Animal Health, Inc. with significantly more confidence than their first encounter. This time they entered through the front doors of the headquarters not as supplicants, but as individuals whose actions had caused the company's stock to plummet and placed their flagship product under intense scrutiny. Security personnel treated them with wary respect, and the receptionist who escorted them to the top-floor executive suite seemed markedly less condescending. The conference room they were shown to was smaller than the previous one, more intimate and, Emily noticed, free of recording devices. Walter Cunningham was already present, standing at the window with his back to the door, shoulders tense beneath his expensive suit. Beside him sat a man Emily didn't recognize, older, with steel-gray hair and the weathered complexion of someone who'd spent considerable time outdoors despite his corporate position. "Wassons, Winters, Dr. Thompson," Cunningham said, turning to greet them with forced cordiality. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Allow me to introduce Gregory Harmon, CEO of Animal Health, Inc." The older man stood, extending his hand with a grip that was firm without being aggressive. "I apologize for not being present at your previous meeting," he said, his voice carrying the slight drawl of someone who'd worked to hide a southern accent. "Had I known the nature of your concerns, I would have made it a priority." Dr. Thompson remained skeptical. "With respect, Mr. Harmon, we made the nature of our concerns quite clear when we requested that initial meeting." "Yes, you did," Harmon acknowledged, surprising them both. "And the information should have been escalated to me immediately. It wasn't. That failure of communication is the first of many things I need to address today." He gestured toward the chairs surrounding the polished table. "Please, sit. What I'm about to share isn't easy for me personally, or for this company, but it's necessary." Once they were seated, Harmon folded his hands on the table, studying them for a moment before speaking. "I understand you've been investigating adverse reactions to Geripaws," he began. "What you may not know is that internally we've been dealing with the same issue for nearly 6 months. Emily exchanged a glance with Dr. Thompson. This admission was unexpected. 6 months, Dr. Thompson repeated. Yet the product remained on the market. Yes, Harmon's face tightened. A decision I was not part of, as it happens. I've been in Europe overseeing our expansion there. I returned last week when our stock began to plummet, and I've spent the past 5 days conducting my own internal investigation. He looked directly at them. What I discovered was deeply disturbing. There have been documented adverse reactions in approximately 2% of animals taking Geripaws, primarily dogs over 8 years old with certain genetic markers. 2% may sound small, Emily interjected, but given how widely this drug is prescribed, that represents thousands of animals. Precisely, Harmon agreed, surprising her again. Thousands of beloved pets suffering needlessly because critical information was suppressed. His jaw clenched momentarily. I want to be very clear. This suppression occurred without my knowledge and against company policy. The individuals responsible have been terminated. That's all very convenient, Dr. Thompson said, skepticism evident in his tone. A few sacrificial employees and the company leadership remains blameless. Harmon's expression didn't change. Your suspicion is warranted, Doctor. I'm not here to proclaim innocence or shift blame to underlings. The failure occurred on my watch, regardless of my direct knowledge. The responsibility ultimately rests with me. He pushed a folder across the table. These are the complete internal reports on Geripaw's adverse reactions, dating back to 3 months after the product launch. I'm providing them to you as a gesture of transparency. You'll find they align with and expand upon your own findings. Dr. Thompson opened the folder, scanning the contents with growing amazement. This is comprehensive. Case studies, chemical analyses, genetic factors. He looked up sharply. You even identified the specific compound causing the reactions. A stabilizing agent that interacts negatively with certain liver enzymes, Harmon confirmed. Present in all batches of Jerry paws, but harmful only to animals with specific genetic profiles. We developed a test to identify at-risk animals, but he paused, his expression darkening. Marketing and legal advised against implementing it. The cost of pre-screening would have reduced profitability. Emily felt a surge of anger. So instead, you let pets die. Not me, Harmon said firmly. But yes, that's essentially what happened, and it's inexcusable. He leaned forward. Ms. Winters, there's something else you should know. Something personal. Emily tensed, unsure what could possibly be coming next. 5 years ago, I was in Riverdale on business when the flood hit, Harmon said quietly. I was trapped in my car when the waters rose. A rescue team reached me, a handler and a German shepherd. The dog pulled me out through the window just before my car was swept away. Emily's breath caught. Max, she whispered. Harmon nodded slowly. I believe so, yes. The handler told me the dog's name was Max as they were getting me to higher ground. Then they left to help others. His eyes grew distant. I later learned that the handler didn't survive, and until your story broke, I had no idea what had happened to the dog that saved my life. Emily sat stunned, trying to process this revelation. The CEO of Animal Health, Inc., the very company whose product had nearly killed Max, had himself been saved by Max during the flood. That can't be coincidence, she finally managed. I don't believe in coincidences of that magnitude, Harmon agreed. When I saw the photo of your dog in the Tribune article, I recognized him immediately. I've never forgotten those eyes. He drew a deep breath. Which makes the harm our product caused him all the more personal to me. A betrayal of the debt I owe. Dr. Thompson, who had been silently absorbing this revelation, finally spoke. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Harmon? Because while this connection is certainly remarkable, it doesn't change the fact that your company produced and marketed a dangerous product, then tried to silence those who discovered the truth. You're absolutely right, Harmon replied. No amount of personal connection or regret changes those facts. He straightened in his chair. Here's what I'm proposing. First, we're immediately recalling all Jerry Paws products worldwide. Second, we're establishing a fund to cover veterinary expenses for any animal harmed by the medication. Third, we're implementing new safety protocols for all our products, including genetic screening when appropriate. He paused, gauging their reactions. Additionally, I would like to offer you both positions on a newly formed independent oversight committee. This committee will have full access to our research and development process, with authority to halt production if safety concerns arise. You would report directly to our board of directors, not to me or any other executive. Emily and Dr. Thompson exchanged glances. The offer was unexpected and, on its face, significant. And if we decline? Dr. Thompson asked carefully. The changes will proceed regardless, Harmon said. Your involvement would strengthen them, but they're not contingent on your participation. I understand if you're not interested in any association with Animal Health, Inc. after what's happened. Emily studied him, trying to discern any hint of deception. Why are you really doing this, Mr. Harmon? Is it just damage control? Partly, he admitted candidly. The damage to our reputation is severe, and transparency is our best path forward from a business perspective, but it's more than that. His expression softened slightly. That dog saved my life, Ms. Winters. I owe him a debt I can never fully repay. But I can ensure that what happened to him doesn't happen to other animals, and I can try to make amends not just to you, but to every pet owner affected by our failure. Before either Emily or Dr. Thompson could respond, the door to the conference room opened abruptly. A thin, sharp-featured man in an expensive suit entered, his expression thunderous. "Greg, what the hell is this?" he demanded, waving a document. "I just heard from legal that you've ordered a full recall without board approval. Do you have any idea what this will cost us?" Harmon's face hardened. "Emily Winters, Dr. Thompson, this is Richard Vaughn, our CFO. Richard, I was just explaining to Miss Winters and Dr. Thompson why the recall is both necessary and non-negotiable." "You can't do this," Vaughn insisted. "The financial implications are significant," Harmon interrupted, "but the ethical implications of not acting are far worse, and since I'm still CEO, the decision stands." Vaughn glared at Emily and Dr. Thompson. "This is because of them, isn't it? These whistleblowers with their exaggerated claims. Do you know we've had offers to buy their silence? Very reasonable offers, which they've rejected." Dr. Thompson straightened. "Excuse me, what offers?" Emily suddenly understood. The break-in at my house, the attack in the parking lot. That wasn't just intimidation, was it? Someone was trying to approach us with a bribe. Vaughn's expression confirmed her suspicion before he could deny it. "Richard," Harmon said, his voice dangerously quiet, "did you authorize attempts to silence these people?" The CFO's silence was answer enough. "Get out," Harmon said coldly. "Go to your office and wait for security. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." "You can't." "I can, and I have. Unless you'd prefer I call the police and discuss witness intimidation charges." Harmon nodded toward the door. "Go, now." After a tense moment, Vaughn stalked out, slamming the door behind him. Harmon turned back to Emily and Dr. Thompson, his composure somewhat recovered. "I apologize for that interruption. It seems my internal investigation missed some key players." He sighed heavily. "I won't insult you by claiming that one rogue executive was responsible for everything. The problem was systemic, a culture that prioritized profit over safety. That's on me, regardless of what I knew or didn't know." Dr. Thompson, who had been processing these rapid developments, finally spoke. "Your offer is significant, Mr. Harmon, and unexpected, but I think we need time to consider it and to verify that your proposed changes are as substantial as they sound." "Of course," Harmon agreed readily. "Take whatever time you need. All the documentation is in that folder, including the recall notice that's being issued today and the charter for the Oversight Committee. My direct number is on my card if you have questions." As they prepared to leave, Emily found herself hesitating. The revelation about Max and Harmon's connection had thrown her off balance. Part of her wanted to believe in his sincerity, while another part remained wary of corporate manipulation. "Mr. Harmon," she said finally, "what happened to Max, and to all the other pets affected by Jerry Paws, can't be undone. No committee or fund can change that." "I know," he replied simply. "Some debts can never be fully repaid, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try." Outside the building, Emily and Dr. Thompson stood on the sidewalk, still processing everything that had transpired. "What do you think?" Emily asked. "Is he sincere?" Dr. Thompson considered carefully. "I think he might be. The revelation about Max saving his life certainly explains his personal investment, and firing the CFO on the spot wasn't for show. That was genuine anger. But can we trust him? Trust the company?" "Trust but verify," Dr. Thompson said with a wry smile. "The documentation he provided gives us leverage. If they renege on any promises, we have what we need to pursue legal action." He paused. "And speaking of legal action, I think we should consult an attorney before responding to his offer. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about all the pets and owners affected." Emily nodded, thinking of Max waiting at home, continuing his gradual recovery. "Whatever we decide, one thing's certain. We've forced a powerful corporation to acknowledge wrongdoing and take action. That's no small victory." "No," Dr. Thompson agreed as they walked toward his car. "It's not small at all. But I suspect the real battle is just beginning. The tentative victory with Animal Health, Inc. brought Emily a sense of cautious optimism, But life has a way of tempering hope with harsh reality. 3 weeks after their meeting with CEO Gregory Harmon, as the company began its nationwide recall of Jerry Paws, Mac's health took an alarming turn for the worse. It began with subtle signs that Emily, now hyper-vigilant about her companion's weight, noticed immediately: a reluctance to eat, a heaviness in his movements that went beyond his usual arthritis. By the second day, Max couldn't rise from his bed without assistance. His breathing labored and his once bright eyes clouded with pain. "It doesn't make sense," Emily told Dr. Thompson over the phone, her voice tight with fear. "He's been off Jerry-Paws for nearly 2 months. He was getting better." "Bring him in right away," Dr. Thompson instructed, concern evident in his tone. "Sometimes these toxins can have delayed effects, or there might be permanent damage we didn't initially detect." The drive to the clinic was a blur of anxiety for Emily. Max lay quietly in the back seat, his massive head resting on a pillow, his eyes following her movements whenever she glanced back at him. There was a resignation in his gaze that frightened her more than any physical symptom, as if he understood something she wasn't yet ready to accept. Dr. Thompson was waiting for them when they arrived, helping Emily guide Max gently into an examination room. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he checked vital signs, drew blood, and conducted a thorough examination. "His liver values are concerning," he said finally, studying the preliminary results. "And there's fluid building up in his lungs. I'd like to keep him overnight for observation and more comprehensive testing." Is it the Jerry-Paws?" Emily asked, her throat tight. "Some kind of relapse?" Dr. Thompson's expression was grave. "It could be residual damage from the medication, yes. But Max is also an older dog with a history of trauma from his working days. There might be underlying conditions that were masked by the more acute symptoms from Jerry-Paws." Emily nodded, trying to process what she was hearing. "Will he—" She couldn't bring herself to finish the question. Dr. Thompson placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I don't know, Emily, but we'll do everything we can." Leaving Max at the clinic was one of the hardest things Emily had ever done. She kissed his graying muzzle, promising to return first thing in the morning, then walked to her car on unsteady legs. The house felt unbearably empty without Max's presence. No click of nails on hardwood, no heavy sigh as he settled in his favorite spot, no watchful eyes following her movements. She tried to distract herself by reviewing the legal documents their attorney had prepared regarding Animal Health Inc.'s proposed settlement and oversight committee. The company appeared to be honoring its commitments, with the recall proceeding smoothly and the Victims Fund already accepting applications. But the words on the page blurred, as Emily's thoughts continually returned to Max. Sleep eluded her that night. She dozed fitfully on the couch, startling awake at every creak of the house, half expecting to hear Max's familiar whine at the back door. By dawn, she had given up on rest entirely, brewing a pot of coffee and waiting impatiently for the hour when she could reasonably return to the clinic. Dr. Thompson called before she could leave. "Emily," he said, his voice carefully neutral, "I think you should come in as soon as you can." The measured tone told her everything she needed to know. "How bad is it?" A pause. "The tests show advanced kidney failure, likely developing for some time, but accelerated by the Jerry-Paws. There's also evidence of a heart condition, something common in older shepherds. I've made him comfortable, but—" "I'm on my way," Emily said, already reaching for her keys. At the clinic, Dr. Thompson led her to a quiet room in the back, away from the bustle of the main treatment area. Max lay on a padded bed, an IV line running into his foreleg, his breathing shallow but steady. When he saw Emily, his tail gave the faintest thump against the blanket. "Hey, buddy," she said softly, kneeling beside him and stroking his fur. She looked up at Dr. Thompson, who stood watching from the doorway. "Tell me honestly, James, what are we looking at?" The veterinarian pulled up a stool, sitting to bring himself to her eye level. The kidney failure is irreversible at this stage. The heart condition is manageable with medication, but given the kidney issues, those medications would do more harm than good. He hesitated. I can keep him comfortable for a little while, days, maybe a week or two, but he's suffering, Emily, and it will only get worse. The words hit her like physical blows. After everything they'd been through, the near miss with euthanasia, the fight against Animal Health Inc., Max's remarkable recovery, to end up back at this point seemed a particularly cruel twist of fate. "So we're back where we started," she said, her voice barely audible, "except this time there's no last-minute reprieve." "I'm so sorry," Dr. Thompson said, genuine anguish in his voice. "If there was anything else I could do—" Emily nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. She turned her attention back to Max, studying the face that had been her constant companion through the darkest period of her life. The dog who had pulled her from floodwaters, who had lain beside her bed during nightmare-plagued nights, who had given her a reason to keep going when grief threatened to overwhelm her. "Can I have some time with him?" she asked. "Of course, as much as you need. He's stable for now." Dr. Thompson rose, pausing at the door. "Emily, whatever you decide, know that you've already given him more time, good time, than he would have had. Remember that." Left alone with Max, Emily settled on the floor beside his bed, one hand resting on his chest to feel the reassuring rise and fall of his breathing. "What do you think, old friend?" she whispered. "Is it time to rest?" Max's eyes, though clouded with age and illness, met hers with the same steady intelligence they'd always held. He shifted slightly, pressing his head against her hand with what seemed like deliberate pressure. Emily spent the entire day at the clinic, leaving Max's side only briefly when necessary. Dr. Thompson checked in periodically, monitoring Max's condition and ensuring his comfort. By late afternoon, it was clear the German Shepherd was declining rapidly, despite the supportive care. His breathing had become more labored, and he no longer responded when Emily said his name. As evening approached, Emily made the decision she'd been dreading all day. Dr. Thompson, seeing her resolve, nodded in understanding. "Would you like some time to say goodbye?" he asked gently. "I've been saying goodbye all day," Emily replied, her voice steadier than she'd expected. "I don't want him to suffer any longer." The procedure itself was peaceful, almost anticlimactic after the emotional turmoil leading up to it. Dr. Thompson administered the sedative first, explaining each step in a low, soothing voice. Max's eyes remained fixed on Emily's face as the tension gradually left his body. When the final injection came, the transition was so gentle that Emily wasn't immediately certain when Max had gone. One moment he was there, his presence as solid and real as it had been for the past 5 years. The next, only his form remained. The essential spirit of him slipped away without fanfare. Emily sat with him afterward, stroking his still warm fur and talking softly about their time together, the hikes they'd taken, the quiet evenings at home, the way he'd always seemed to know when she needed comfort. Dr. Thompson gave her privacy, checking in only once to ask if she needed anything. "I'd like to take him home," Emily said finally, "to bury him in the garden. He loved lying in the sun there." Dr. Thompson helped her wrap Max's body in his favorite blanket and carry him to her car. The drive home passed in a fog of grief, the weight of Max's absence already settling around her like a physical presence. At home, she found herself moving through routines by rote, checking his water bowl, glancing at his bed, listening for the sound of his nails on the floor. The garden burial was simple and solitary. Emily dug the grave herself, refusing offers of help from neighbors who had noticed her activity. She placed Max's worn tennis ball and favorite toy beside him, then covered him with earth and planted a small dogwood sapling to mark the spot. That night, alone in the empty house, the full weight of her loss crashed over Emily like a wave. She curled on the couch, clutching one of Max's blankets, and finally allowed herself to sob. For Max, for her family lost in the flood, for all the grief she'd kept carefully contained for so long. In her darkest hour, with her most faithful companion gone, Emily felt more alone than she had since the floodwaters receded. The house echoed with absence, every corner haunted by memories. The victory against Animal Health, Inc., the pending settlement, the promise of reforms, none of it seemed to matter in the face of this final, irrevocable loss. As dawn broke, Emily sat in her garden beside the freshly turned earth of Max's grave, emptied of tears but still aching with grief. The dogwood sapling stood fragile but upright in the early light, a promise of growth and continuance that seemed impossibly distant from her current pain. "I don't know how to do this without you," she whispered to the silent garden. "You were the last piece of that life, the bridge between then and now." She traced her fingers over the soil. "How do I move forward from here?" As if in answer, her phone rang, cutting through the morning stillness. The caller ID showed Dr. Thompson's number. But Emily stared at her ringing phone for several seconds before answering, her voice rough from crying. "James?" "Emily, I'm sorry to call so early," Dr. Thompson said, his tone urgent. "Is this a bad time?" She almost laughed at the question, what could be a worse time, but she simply said, "It's fine. What is it?" "I've been up all night reviewing Mac's test results," he continued. "Something didn't sit right with me, so I ran additional analyses. Emily, the kidney failure wasn't just from residual Jerry-Pause damage." Emily's grief-fogged mind struggled to process his words. "What do you mean?" There were traces of a different compound in his blood work, ethylene glycol metabolites. It's commonly found in antifreeze. "Antifreeze?" Emily repeated, confused. "That's impossible. I don't even have any in my house." "That's just it," Dr. Thompson said, his voice grave. "It wouldn't have been in your house. Max would have had to ingest it within the 48 hours before he started showing symptoms." The implication slowly dawned on her. "You think someone poisoned him? Deliberately?" "I can't confirm it with absolute certainty, but the evidence suggests it. The concentration was too high for accidental exposure." There was a hesitation in his voice. "Emily, who knew you were meeting with Animal Health, Inc.? Who knew about your involvement in the investigation?" Emily's mind raced through possibilities. Their meeting with Gregory Harmon had been private, but the fired CFO Richard Vaughn had clearly known about it. The Tribune article had named her, and her address wasn't difficult to find. And then there was the earlier break-in at her house. "You think this is connected to the Jerry-Pause case?" she said, a cold anger beginning to replace her numbness. "Someone poisoned Max to silence us or get revenge?" "It's a possibility we need to consider," Dr. Thompson replied. "I've already contacted the police to report my findings. They want to speak with you as well." Emily looked at the fresh soil covering Max's grave, the grief within her crystallizing into something harder and more focused. "I'll be right there." The following weeks passed in a blur of police interviews, legal consultations, and sleepless nights. The investigation into Max's poisoning proceeded slowly, with forensic teams combing through Emily's yard and neighborhood for evidence. Though nothing conclusive was found, the detective assigned to the case, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Morales, who had 2 German shepherds of her own, seemed personally invested in finding answers. "Whoever did this was careful," she told Emily after their third meeting. "But people who do these kinds of things often get careless eventually. We'll keep looking." Meanwhile, the case against Animal Health, Inc. had taken on new dimensions. When news of Max's suspicious death broke, public outrage intensified. Gregory Harmon issued a statement expressing shock and condemning the act, while reiterating the company's commitment to making amends for the Jerry-Pause situation. He also announced the temporary suspension of Richard Vaughn pending investigation into possible involvement. a move that sent the company's already struggling stock into another tailspin. Emily's attorney, a silver-haired woman named Margaret Linden who specialized in corporate malfeasance cases, advised caution. "This changes things," she explained during a meeting in her downtown office. "If we can establish a connection between Max's poisoning and Animal Health Inc., even through a rogue employee, the settlement value increases dramatically. But more importantly, it potentially moves from civil to criminal territory." Dr. Thompson, who had accompanied Emily to the meeting, spoke up. "What about the oversight committee Harmon proposed? Is that still on the table?" "It is," Margaret confirmed. "In fact, Harmon has been surprisingly proactive throughout this whole ordeal. He's expanded the proposed committee's authority and added independent veterinary researchers to its roster." She turned to Emily. "He's also asked specifically about your willingness to still participate despite recent events." Emily hadn't given much thought to the oversight committee since Mac's death. Her focus had narrowed to finding whoever had poisoned him, with all other concerns receding into the background. But now, considering the possibility, she felt a stirring of purpose. "Would it help?" she asked. "Would being on this committee actually protect other animals, or is it just for show?" Margaret considered the question carefully. "Based on the charter documents and the caliber of people Harmon is recruiting, I believe it could have real impact. Animal Health Inc. is one of the largest pet pharmaceutical companies in the country. Changes there could influence the entire industry." "I need to think about it," Emily said. The idea of working with even tangentially the company whose product had contributed to Max's initial decline felt like a betrayal. Yet, if it could prevent other pet owners from experiencing similar losses. That evening, as Emily sat in her silent house, still painfully empty without Max's presence, her phone rang again. The caller ID surprised her, Gregory Harmon. "Miss Winters?" His voice came through cautiously when she answered. "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to express my personal condolences about Max. What happened to him is unforgivable." Emily remained silent, unsure how to respond. "I also wanted you to know," Harmon continued, "that we're conducting our own internal investigation into whether anyone connected with Animal Health Inc. might have been involved. Richard Vaughn has been cooperating with police, and we've turned over all communications and security footage that might help identify who did this." "Why are you calling me directly?" Emily asked, her voice flat. "Isn't this something your lawyers should handle?" There was a pause. "Probably," Harmon admitted, "but this feels personal to me. Max saved my life during that flood. I owe him a debt I can never repay. And now I can't even try." Another pause. "I understand if you want nothing to do with our company after this, but I hope you'll consider still joining the oversight committee. Your perspective as a nurse, as Max's owner, as someone who's seen the harm our failures can cause would be invaluable." Emily closed her eyes, suddenly exhausted. "I'll think about it, Mr. Harmon. That's all I can promise right now." After she hung up, Emily wandered out to her garden, settling on the bench beside Max's grave. The dogwood sapling had already put forth a few tentative leaves, reaching toward the spring sunshine with determined fragility. "What would you do, Max?" she asked softly. "You never backed down from a challenge when you were working. You never left someone who needed help." She traced the outline of a leaf with her fingertip. "Is that what I should do? Stay in the fight?" The garden offered no answers beyond the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. But as Emily sat there in the gathering twilight, she felt something shift within her. Not an easing of grief, but perhaps the first stirrings of a way forward through it. The breakthrough in Mac's case came from an unexpected source 3 days later. Emily was sorting through a box of Mac's things. His leash, his brushes, the special treats she'd bought for him, when her doorbell rang. Detective Morales stood on her porch, accompanied by a uniformed officer. "We have news," Morales said without preamble. "May we come in?" In her living room, the detective pulled out a tablet and brought up a grainy security camera image. This was captured by a gas station camera 2 blocks from your house the day before Max got sick. The black and white footage showed a man in a baseball cap and sunglasses approaching a parked car. Something about his bearing seemed vaguely familiar to Emily, though she couldn't place it. "We enhanced the image as much as possible," Morales continued, swiping to a clearer version. "Does this person look familiar?" Emily studied the image more carefully. The man's face was partially obscured, but there was something in the set of his shoulders, the way he carried himself. "I can't be sure," she said slowly, "but he reminds me of someone from Animal Health, Inc., the CFO who was fired, Richard Vaughn." Morales nodded, looking unsurprised. "That's what we thought, too. We showed this to Gregory Harmon yesterday, and he positively identified Vaughn." She swiped to another image. "This is from your neighbor's security camera, taken later the same day. Same man, walking past your house, carrying what appears to be a small package." Emily felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. "He poisoned Max." "We believe so," Morales confirmed. "We searched Vaughn's house this morning and found antifreeze matching the chemical signature from Max's blood work. He's in custody now, denying everything, of course, but the evidence is strong." Relief and rage warred within Emily. "Why? Why would he do this?" "From what we can gather, he blamed you and Dr. Thompson for his dismissal from Animal Health, Inc. The company was his whole identity. 27 years there, working his way up to CFO. When Harmon fired him on the spot, something apparently snapped." Morales' expression softened slightly. "It won't bring Max back, but Vaughn will face charges for animal cruelty, trespassing, possibly even corporate espionage. He won't get away with what he did." After the officers left, Emily sat in her kitchen, turning over this new information. Richard Vaughn's face, what she could see of it in those security images, had shown no emotion, no hesitation as he walked toward her house with the means to kill her beloved companion. The calculated cruelty of it staggered her. She called Dr. Thompson, who was equally shocked by the news. "At least now we know," he said after she filled him in. "It wasn't random, and it wasn't the company itself. Just one vindictive man who lost everything and wanted someone to blame." "Does that make it better or worse?" Emily wondered aloud. "I don't know," Dr. Thompson admitted, "but it means the reforms at Animal Health, Inc. could still be genuine. Harmon's cooperation with the investigation suggests he's sincere about changing course." Emily thought about the oversight committee, about the other pets who might benefit from stricter protocols and better testing. She thought about Max, not just in his final days of illness, but in his prime. Powerful, determined, unfailingly loyal to his purpose of helping those in need. "I think I'm going to accept Harmon's offer," she said finally. "Join the committee. Make sure they follow through on their promises." "I think that's the right call," Dr. Thompson replied. "And I'll be right there with you." Harmon asked me to join as well, to head the veterinary research division of the committee. 2 days later, Emily received an unexpected package delivered to her door. Inside was a framed photograph she'd never seen before. A younger Gregory Harmon, soaking wet and wrapped in an emergency blanket, sitting beside a mud-splattered German Shepherd, unmistakably a younger Max. Both looked exhausted but alive, the connection between rescuer and rescued palpable, even in the hasty snapshot. A note accompanied the photo. "This was taken by a first responder right after Max pulled me from my car. I've kept it on my desk for 5 years as a reminder that second chances are precious. I hope our company deserves the second chance you're helping to give it." Emily traced Max's image with her fingertip, seeing in it the strength and purpose that had defined him in life. In that moment, she knew with certainty that her decision to join the oversight committee wasn't a betrayal of Max's memory, but an honoring of it, continuing his legacy of rescue and protection in a different form. That evening, she placed the photograph on her mantel and then went out to the garden, where the dogwood sapling stood a little taller each day over Max's resting place. The ache of his absence remained, but alongside it now grew something else, a sense of purpose forged in grief, but reaching toward something constructive. "We're not done yet, Max," she said softly to the gathering dusk. "There's still work to do." 1 year later, Emily stood in her garden beside the dogwood tree that now stood nearly 5 feet tall, its branches spread wide over Max's resting place. The sapling had flourished beyond all expectations, much like the seeds of change planted in the aftermath of his death. White blossoms covered its branches, a few petals drifting down to rest on the stone marker she'd placed there, simply inscribed, "Max. He saved more than just lives." "I think he would approve," came a voice from behind her. Emily turned to see Dr. Thompson, dressed in his customary khakis and button-down shirt, rather than his veterinary scrubs, a folder tucked under his arm. "Of all of it?" Emily smiled, a genuine expression that had become easier with the passage of time. "I think so, too." She glanced at her watch. "Are we running late?" "Right on schedule," he assured her. "The others are meeting us at the community center. Everything's ready." Together they walked to Dr. Thompson's car, now a newer model, one of the few indulgences he'd allowed himself since the settlement money had been distributed. Emily had been more conservative with her portion, putting most of it into a foundation that now bore Mac's name. As they drove through Riverdale toward the community center, Emily reflected on the tumultuous year that had passed. Richard Vaughn had eventually pleaded guilty to animal cruelty charges, receiving a 3-year sentence that many in the community felt was too lenient. Animal Health, Inc., under Gregory Harmon's leadership, had undergone a complete organizational restructuring, with the Independent Oversight Committee, including both Emily and Dr. Thompson, reviewing every aspect of their research and development process. The Jerapah scandal, as it had come to be known, had rippled through the pet pharmaceutical industry, prompting new regulations and testing requirements. Other companies, seeing the financial and reputational damage Animal Health Inc. had suffered, rushed to review their own products and protocols. It wasn't a perfect system yet, but it was significantly improved. "Nervous?" Dr. Thompson asked as they pulled into the parking lot of the Riverdale Community Center. "A little," Emily admitted. "It's one thing to work behind the scenes on the committee. Public speaking is different." "You'll be great," he assured her. "Just speak from the heart, like you always do." Inside, the large meeting room was already filling with people, veterinarians, pet owners, local officials, and reporters. A banner stretched across the front wall reading, "The Max Foundation, 1 year of progress." Tables along the sides displayed informational materials about pet medication safety, adoption opportunities from local shelters, and the Foundation's various initiatives. Gregory Harmon was already there, chatting with the mayor. He spotted Emily and Dr. Thompson, excusing himself to greet them. Over the past year, their professional relationship had evolved into something approaching friendship, built on a shared commitment to reform and perhaps the unique connection they all shared with Max. "Emily, James," Harmon said warmly, shaking their hands. "Everything looks wonderful. You've accomplished so much in just 1 year." "We've had help," Emily acknowledged, including him in her glance. Harmon had been true to his word, not only supporting the Oversight Committee, but personally championing the Foundation's efforts. His company had become the model for transparency and safety protocols in the industry. As they spoke, Emily noticed a woman making her way toward them, Susan Williams, whose son Marcus had received the surgery Emily had helped fund. Beside her walked Marcus himself, now 9 years old and healthy, his previous pallor replaced by the vibrant energy of childhood. "Emily," Susan called, embracing her. "I was hoping to catch you before the ceremony. Marcus wanted to show you something." The boy proudly held up a photograph of a small brown puppy with oversized paws and floppy ears. "This is Scout," he announced. "We adopted him last week from the shelter. Mom says we wouldn't have him if it weren't for you and Max." Emily knelt to his level, examining the photo with appropriate solemnity. "He's magnificent," she declared. "A very noble dog." "Dad says I have to train him properly," Marcus continued earnestly. "He might not be a hero like Max, but he's going to be a really good dog." "I'm sure he will be," Emily agreed, feeling the familiar bittersweet pang that accompanied any mention of Max, now softened by time and purpose. As more people arrived, including many who had lost pets to Jerry Paws and others whose animals had been saved by the recall, Emily made her way to the podium. The room quieted as she adjusted the microphone, looking out at the faces turned expectantly toward her. "A year ago," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I lost my best friend. Many of you here today have experienced similar losses. The special grief that comes when we lose a companion animal who has become family to us. Max was more than just a pet to me. He was my rescuer, my protector, my constant companion through the darkest period of my life." She paused, drawing a breath. What I didn't know then was that Max would continue to rescue others even after he was gone. His story, our story, sparked a movement that has changed how pet medications are developed, tested, and monitored. It exposed practices that put profit over safety and brought about reforms that will protect countless animals in the future. Emily gestured to the tables of information around the room. The Max Foundation was created to ensure those reforms continue and expand. In our first year, we've established a medication reporting system that allows veterinarians and pet owners to flag potential adverse reactions immediately. We've funded independent research into pet medication safety. We've provided financial assistance to families whose pets were harmed by unsafe products. And perhaps most importantly, we've created a community where the human-animal bond is respected and protected. She looked toward Gregory Harmon, acknowledging him with a nod. "We've also seen that corporations can change, can learn, can do better when they choose to. Animal Health Inc. has become a model for the industry, proving that ethical practices and business success can go hand in hand." As Emily continued outlining the Foundation's accomplishments and future goals, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The raw wound of Max's loss had gradually transformed into something productive, not diminishing her grief, but giving it meaning. After the formal presentation and the ribbon cutting for the Foundation's new local office, Emily found herself surrounded by well-wishers and supporters. Among them was Detective Morales, who had become a friend and valuable ally in the Foundation's work. "Never thought I'd see the day," Morales commented, looking around at the gathered crowd. "A whole community mobilized over pet safety. You've done something remarkable here, Emily." "It wasn't just me," Emily demurred. "No, but it started with you," Morales insisted. "With you refusing to give up, even when it would have been easier to walk away." She hesitated, then added more softly, "I think Max would be proud." As the event wound down, Emily found herself drawn back toward Dr. Thompson and Gregory Harmon, who were deep in conversation about a new testing protocol being implemented across Animal Health Inc.'s research facilities. "Emily," Harmon acknowledged as she joined them, "we were just discussing something I wanted to run by you as well." He looked slightly nervous, unusual for the normally confident CEO. "The company is developing a new arthritis medication for senior dogs, properly tested this time with all the protocols the Oversight Committee established. If the final trials go well, we'd like to name it in Max's honor. Only with your permission, of course." Emily was momentarily taken aback. The idea of Max's name being associated with Animal Health Inc. would have been unthinkable a year ago, but now, "I'd need to review all the research," she said finally. "See the trial results for myself." "Of course," Harmon agreed quickly. "Complete transparency. I wouldn't have it any other way." Dr. Thompson watched the exchange with quiet approval. "We've come a long way," he observed. Later that evening, as the community center emptied and the last displays were packed away, Emily found herself alone with Dr. Thompson, sitting on a bench outside in the soft spring twilight. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything, for saving Max that first time, for standing with me through all of this. I couldn't have done it alone." "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for," he replied. "But you're welcome all the same." He hesitated, then added, "I've been meaning to ask you something. The Parker family brought in their new rescue dog yesterday, a German Shepherd mix, about 2 years old. Good temperament, healthy, but they're moving overseas and can't take him with them. He needs a home with someone who understands the breed." Emily felt her heart constrict. She hadn't considered getting another dog. The thought had seemed like a betrayal of Max's memory. But now, with the foundation established and flourishing, with the worst of her grief softened by time and purpose, "You think I should consider it?" she asked. "I think Max would want you to have another companion," Dr. Thompson said gently. "Not to replace him, no one could, but to carry on the bond that meant so much to both of you." Emily thought of her empty house, of the garden where the dogwood bloomed over Max's resting place. She thought of sleepless nights and quiet mornings, of walks taken alone and meals eaten in silence. "I'd like to meet him," she said finally. "This Shepherd mix, no promises, but I'd like to meet him." Thompson smiled, the expression reaching his eyes. "He'll be at the clinic tomorrow. His name is Ranger." As they walked back to the car under a sky filling with stars, Emily felt a sense of completion. Not of her grief, which would always be part of her, but of a circle that had begun with rescue and was continuing in the same way. Max had pulled her from floodwaters. She had fought to give him a second chance. Together they had sparked changes that would save countless other animals. And now, perhaps, there would be another dog to rescue and be rescued by in turn. "Life goes on," she murmured, half to herself and half to the memory of a loyal German Shepherd who had changed everything. "It does," Dr. Thompson agreed, glancing toward the clear night sky. "And sometimes, if we're lucky, it goes on better than before." When Max rested his aging head on Emily's lap that final day at the veterinary clinic, he wasn't just a dog saying goodbye. He was a chapter of life closing, a reminder of how deeply our animal companions witness our journey. For those of us in our golden years who've loved and lost faithful pets, Mac's story touches that tender place where grief and gratitude meet. Like Emily, many of us have weathered storms of loss, spouses, friends, our own health challenges, with a loyal animal beside us, asking nothing but offering everything. These creatures mark our days with routine and purpose when retirement empties our calendars. They listen without judgment when our children are busy with their own lives. They warm our laps when arthritis brings pain. Their passing leaves a silence in our homes that echoes with memory. But Emily's journey reminds us that grief, when channeled toward purpose, blooms like her dogwood tree, not erasing our loss, but transforming it. In our wisdom years, we understand profound truths. Loving deeply means risking heartbreak, yet that same heartbreak can inspire change that outlives us all. Mac's legacy whispers that it's never too late to begin again, to rescue and be rescued once more. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.